Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home. Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Welcome to the Free Birth Society podcast. This is a radical space for women who are ready to celebrate their autonomous choices in birth, motherhood, and beyond. Together, we'll learn about wild birth through personal narrative, we'll explore the politics of birth, and we'll analyze everything that relates to our lives as women from a feminist perspective. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Hi, women. I'm happy to be here with you all, hoping that you're still feeling the New Year vibes and making this month as good as it can be. Just a quick check-in here. Matriarch Rising tickets are officially on sale. Oh my gosh, please come. It feels so close already, and we have sold out every year, so please don't wait. Grab your ticket, make your plans, and come to my land for the time of your life. www.matriarchrisingfestival.com. Also, a time-sensitive announcement. We open enrollment for 2024's Blood Mystery School next week. If you're listening to this as this episode is released, there's just nothing like this program. I'm so proud of it. You will become a cycle coach, a cycle breaker, a woman and girls initiation facilitator, all in one epic 16-week program. It's a really big deal. It is deep, deep work. Go check out the website. Learn all about it at bloodmysterieschool.com. Enrollment opens Tuesday, January 23rd, and we begin classes February 21st. Don't miss this. We only run it once a year. All right. So today on the show, we have my friend Stella. Stella comes from a large family of Nigerian doctors, and after she gave up the idea of med school, she found herself in the radical birthkeeper school. Stella experienced huge paradigm shifts and really deconditioned herself from her medical upbringing so that she could become the woman, the mother she wanted to be. While navigating the grief of losing her mother and the joy of meeting her spirit daughter prior to pregnancy, Stella decides to choose a wild pregnancy and birth completely outside the medical system. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome, welcome.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. Our little babies are so close in age, so we've gotten to really track with each other throughout our pregnancies and our first year of mothering these babies. So it's very fun.
Yes, for sure.
All right, girlfriend, let's get into it. You free
Let's get
birth
into
your
it.
first baby. How crazy are you?
Psycho, loco, all the
Take us
crazies.
into who are you before you get pregnant and what shapes, pretty flippin' unique story of a woman who with her first baby decides to not involve the medical system. So
Yeah.
tell us what you got.
Okay, where do I begin? I think my inkling is to kind of start with my calling into motherhood and how that kind of unfolded. I come from a family of 6+ half kids, and I just always grew up in a large family, like a big Nigerian large family. And my mom was a doctor, and seeing her, I always thought in my life I would become a doctor. That was just kind of like, okay, mom's a doctor. I was just like her, have the same name as her. Like, she's like my purview as to how life is supposed to go. And so growing up, I always thought that. And kind of as I got older, I was like super interested in birth. Birth came up in my life. And by the time I got to college, like I started in the day I was at orientation, I was like, wait, fuck this. I don't want to do pre-med. Like I just saw like the classes they were suggesting. I'm like, no, this isn't for me. So like I thought that baby calling was out the window because that was my only lens towards the birth world was like become an OB. And there you go. So I kind of thought it was over and gone with, and I went in a fully different direction. I started to study mass communication and media and got into like the video world and marketing and all of that. But it never went away, like that kind of whisper in my ear about like this calling to work with mothers and children. But it was just kind of, it was there on my shoulder. Fast forward, post college, years after college, I was actually in Costa Rica, and the typical, I did an ayahuasca ceremony, and everything was revealed to me. I experienced such things.
It is a theme on this podcast.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny because I listen to episodes and I'm like, yep, that's about right. Ayahuasca will definitely slap you in the face and help you realize, like, okay, it's time. So I was in Costa Rica. I think this was 2021 or something. Did ayahuasca, and lo and behold, I felt my baby's spirit, aura, everything very strongly. I had already like kind of felt like this little girl in my life that was like maybe through my family line that was like ready to come through any one of my sisters. Like that's just how it felt, like a very familiar soul. And then she visited while I was journeying deep into this journey, and I just was like, oh my gosh, you're here. I had a name, Haven, and I just was like, okay, like I know you're coming soon. Like, who's your daddy? And
were you single?
Let me know. I wasn't single. I was already dating my now husband, but
okay.
I was like maneuvering, like, is this, are we doing this? Like we were still just dating. We had just met months before. So like, who is this child and is it his? And I felt like this expansive love. Actually, when I asked that question, I thought of him. I felt like this expansive, like I could feel the love that he had for me, and it was strong enough to procreate. And it was like right. It felt so right. So I'm like coming back with this experience. It's so funny because I read my journal the other day of it, and I'm like, whoa, like this was real. Like this was, I was still like coming down from the ceremony and writing these notes. I could tell because it looked like shit, and I'm like trying to like not be shaking. So yeah, that happened early 21. My mom then died months later, 2 months later. And actually, we're gonna get real deep, might as well, huh? Because I see like how spirit is like orchestrating all of this. My mom died. I think the first day that my Gerard, my now husband, like we had sex in such a manner where we could procreate, if you know what I mean. Like the first time I didn't get pregnant. I didn't get pregnant, but like that window, that portal opened, and then literally the next day I find out that my mother died in Nigeria. I'm telling you, it could have been literally the same hours. I don't know.
Whoa.
So like there's like this big, powerful, energetic like thing happening here, right? And I can't explain it all. I can't properly put words to it, but it's right? It's right. So then simultaneously, I think right when I got back is when I started Radical Birthkeeper School. And so I'm like, this is like a whole new world to me. Like I said, I come from I grew up in my mom's doctor's office, like literally working there at probably like way too young of an age and just like helping around, cleaning stuff that a 7-year-old can handle. But it was a family business, and so to come into this world, and I got interested in the world because I had traveled a lot, and during my travels I saw that like this whole world of birth and motherhood, like I think in the US has been so bastardized by like we've taken away like mother nature from this process so much. And all around the world, people were still having their babies, and these babies were growing up in fields and walking around and learning stuff like by nature, with nature, having babies. And it wasn't this big show, like women having their babies, going home and taking care of them. And it like wasn't this big deal. So that kind of got me like starting to wanting to deconstruct some of like the the paradigm, the industrialized paradigm that I had been learning growing up, but it was a little scary too, because I'm like, is this dangerous? Like, I didn't really tell anyone I was taking RBK. Gerard might have been like one of the only people that knew, and he was like, yeah, do it. And like, he was so for it because he too like was understanding like it's so much bigger and so much like more simple at the same time, right? Just have your baby. So
the ayahuasca ceremony into your mom passing, and then RBK's after that, right?
Yeah,
when you get
right
home
after that,
from, because you go to Nigeria.
Yeah, so that was even before. I was in Nigeria with my mom before she passed. And then I came back like at the peak of like COVID was just starting, 2020. The next year is the ayahuasca ceremony, and then also months later she passes, and then RBK starts. So it's like a lot happening all at once, like my world being rocked over and over and over and over again.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Because you don't get pregnant until after RBK.
Literally right after.
Gotcha. Okay, but when you said open the portal, you mean I'm understanding now.
Yeah. Just the ability that we can now start. Yeah, the consciousness. Yeah, and like we can now we started calling in this baby, and not even knowing like my mom was passing. So it's just like all of these energetic shifts, and yeah, I go through RBK and I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. You could just have your baby at home. What? Like, oh my gosh, but this is amazing. Learning the physiology of birth, learning the beauty and the intentionality behind the design and like the simplicity of it. And the fact that birth, it's evolving thing, what I'm learning and how I'm starting to shape my perception and understanding of how birth works. And I understand that it'll always be growing, but it was like to have such a radical difference in what I had been coming to understand and believe, I think was really good for me because I'm a very like neutral person. I can be, I see both sides really easily. So it was like a way other side of the spectrum shift. And it was really what I needed because it was like, coming out of RBK, I was like, there's no other way I want to bring life into this world, but in the comfort of my own home. I was sure of it at that point. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I get pregnant right after. And I'm like trying to start a birth business. I low key feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I've never even been in a birth before. But I was like, oh, maybe the first birth I'm meant to be in is my own. Like maybe that's the way this is going. Like let's go for it, And so thus begins like a fully wild pregnancy, which, was like way outside of my paradigm as well. Like to just like, I remember asking a question during RBK and I was like, to hear like you don't need to go to any prenatal appointments with with a doctor. I was like, really? I'm like, okay, what about like just one to make sure everything's okay? Like, what about, all of these things? Like, can we really be as radical as to not see the doctor at all while you're pregnant? Is that real life? Is that possible? Is that wise? Like, is that even a good idea? And I remember you saying something along the lines of like, yeah, sure, you can go in and see a doctor if you want, but just know like now you're in the system. And then if you like just stop coming, like they have that marker on you. And I'm like, and then I was like, wait, but like why we operate under the assumption that something is wrong in pregnancy. And that in and of itself was a big shift that I had to encounter in my mind and heart and just say like, wait a minute, I'm going into this thing in full trust. I'm full trust of my body, my baby, everything. And if I feel an inkling, if I feel anything different, I will listen to that. I'm just going to intuitively explore this pregnancy. And that's what I did. And it was joyful. It was such a beautiful experience. The day after I found out I was pregnant, the day before I found out I was pregnant, I was meant to leave to go to Nigeria for my mom's funeral. So I think this is what you're thinking of. She ended up being buried months after she actually died because we had to get the whole family to Nigeria. There's all this stuff going on, COVID, everything. So it took us a while. And another thing that's like super synchronous, I'm like 6 months later, I'm like going to Nigeria and I'm also finding out that I'm with child. And it's like, whoa, a lot, right? So I tell Gerard and we're like freaking out and I'm like, okay, bye. Do this. I'm going across the world. And so I end up in Nigeria. I'm the only one who knows I'm pregnant, aside from like some of I told my siblings and my dad is like, this is too much. Like his reaction was just like, whoa, like, oh God. Especially because we weren't legally married yet, all this stuff, traditional family. And so, Nigeria happens, but I felt so right. Like I got to be like, you're here with grandma, seeing grandma go home, and like you're here, you're getting to witness this and from my womb. And like it felt so special. Like my aunts gave me a name, like a nickname, just like in Nigeria, it's just so uncommon to give out nicknames. And they gave me this name, Omeka Nneya, which means just like your mother. You're like your mother. And when they started calling me that, I was like, oh my God, that's her name. That's like one of her middle names. Cause I was kind of exploring like what's gonna be her middle name. And the way mine did it, and my mom did it, and a lot of people do, is like you'll allow people in your family to give them a name to kind of, names are spells. You're casting spells over this person, right? Every time you're saying their name, you're like calling meaning out into them. So like names are very, very, very significant in my culture. And so to be given a name by my aunts, like it just felt like they didn't know. I was secretly in my head like, oh my God, I think that's her name. And I wrote this whole like long thing in my notes to her with her name and a whole message about like, I know who you are and this is who you are. And like, this energy is so strong and like, I can't wait for you to come our side. And then at the end I said, if you're a boy, please don't be confused.
Yeah.
I just think you have a lot of divine feminine energy within you, but don't be confused about what you are. But I just knew. Everyone knew. Everyone was like, that's a girl. So yeah, I go through this pregnancy. It's beautiful. And then around week 20, I was about almost 5 months in, I started to get this really sharp pain. And then, Google's not your friend, but of course I Google sharp pain on my right side. And it's like, you have preeclampsia, you have this, all these things start. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I chose to like be monitoring my blood pressure and urine. Like I got urine strips. I just wanted to have that on my own. So I kind of was like monitoring it and had gone up a little bit from what it was normal. So then I start like, oh my gosh, something could be wrong.
And why did you choose that? That's kind of
so I actually a friend through RBK said that that's what she had done. She was like, you don't have to. You're likely fine. But if you want that reassurance for yourself and you just want to like monitor your own stuff, like this is what I did. I got a blood pressure cuff and I got urine strips just to make sure there's no protein in my urine. And I was like, okay, I, especially knowing that like I might be getting questions from family and stuff, I was like, let me at least just like have this and it'll feel good for myself to kind of have a marker on it. So I kind of did it very loosely. I wasn't like, constantly checking, but I just checked in every once in a while to make sure my blood pressure was cool. And it was just like a little higher. So then I was like, I told myself I needed to go to the hospital. Go into the hospital. And it was like 5 hours of time wasted. There was nothing, you know what I mean? And I say that also knowing that like I have family members who have gone into the hospital and had different experiences, and so I'm like, while I don't regret going in, I now know I just really didn't have to for myself. And like it felt like a waste of time for me. That's like
what do you mean?
That's like as simple as it.
What do you mean you had family members that had a different experience?
Like I had a family member after my birth who was experiencing pain, went into the hospital. It was a whole other story. And
they found something serious.
And
gotcha.
Her baby, didn't make it through pregnancy. And so that was tragic, completely tragic. And I told her about my experience and it was way different. And so while I'm like, that's why I say I'm like still in this process of like really understanding like where I put my foot down, where I say, you got to trust your gut, you got to trust yourself. It's like evolving, I feel. But I can't, for me, I'm like, yeah, that's like someone I love and I'm so close to who had such a different experience in going in. So that's why I'm like, I don't regret it, but I didn't need to, and I ended up not having an experience like that. And I'm grateful. But that was a part of the journey. I went in, felt like I didn't need to, and I never went back. I did hire a doula, and she was comfortable attending the birth without a midwife or anyone, just as like my person. So in my mind, I was like, you're kind of like my birthkeeper, because there's no other person in Cincinnati that I know of that does this.
Had
That's like
she attended births
yeah.
outside the system before?
Yes,
That's
she
cool.
had. And so she was comfortable with it. And she was the only person I had met and talked to that was comfortable with it. So I was like, okay, let's roll with it. We met a few times throughout my pregnancy, but that's even another thing. In retrospect, I'm like, next time I don't need that, So I just appreciate the fact that this pregnancy I was able to fully autonomously choose my care, choose to do my own care, and whether, and like I was calling the shots. And that's where I'm like really understanding, like that's the point, that I am able to actually be the woman in charge,
Of
and
your life,
I'm not relinquishing that.
Seriously.
And so like that is what matters most to me. And so yeah, that was, and then also like, so 5 months in, I was able to travel. And then at around 7 months was matriarch rising. So I go to matriarch rising with my best friend. I'm like, I need you to come. I don't know about, I'm like still testing the waters with all these people. I don't want to go alone. I'm like so pregnant. And so she came with me, and we just had such a beautiful time, and like just like floating around under the sun, like full belly. And there's so many other women that were just the same amount. I think I was like a week ahead of you or so. And then, a bunch of other women that were right where we were, and we learned village prenatal. And it just felt like so, like this is care. This is pregnancy care. Just being around my sisters, being with like-minded women who are just like in full love and support of other women. And like there's no annoying questions being asked about my pregnancy, and like
when are you gonna
why I'm
induce?
choosing, why I'm choosing what I'm choosing. Like,
you look big.
like, yeah, like, are you sure it's not twins? Like
God.
all of the bullshit that I get. And like no shock in that I'm not, engaging in the medical system. Whereas literally with my family, like there's some people that I straight up lied to, because I was like, I don't want to hear what you have to say. So yeah, I have a midwife. My appointments are going great, blah, blah, blah. And then some people where I told half truths and stuff. And then, again, that's another thing where I'm like, hindsight's 2020. Looking back, I'm like, I'm not going to do that again. I don't need to like twist my story or like fumble my, like make you believe that I'm doing a certain thing because of your fear. Like this is the way I'm doing it. And guess what? Like it's the safest route for me. That's what I want. And so, but because I didn't want to deal with the questions and all of this stuff, I was just like, yeah, sure. I'm gonna tell you what you want to hear, so that you don't like insert your fear into my very like safe space. Like I felt so safe.
So who in your life, like what did your bubble of truth and like look like? Was it a pretty small group of people that knew the full plan?
Yeah. I would say very small. I would say like a few of my best friends knew everything, and Gerard knew everything, my stepdaughter. Other people, like as soon as I would say something, they're like, what? If I got like any inkling of worry, they didn't get the full story. Just like, I'm not dealing with you. So it was very few. Even my sisters like knew that I was just gonna have a doula and all of that, but I think they thought like maybe she would monitor if I need to. Like it was just like, not as free birth as people, but even the term free birth, most of my community had never even heard that. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was very few people who knew the full narrative. And I like that. I wanted to keep it that way. But I also, later on, I'm like, man, I feel like I have to keep up with like what I'm telling people and like lying. And like I was out of integrity fully.
Right.
And like that part was like the contention that I just had to grapple with because of how I chose to go about this. And
So then what happens after she's here in terms of the mistruths or half truths? Does everyone in your life now know that you lied?
people who have asked. People who have
Gotcha.
asked, yeah, most people haven't asked though because everything went well. They don't really care.
Right.
They don't care to know the
Until
full
they hear this
story.
episode.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, we'll see who actually decides to listen to it. I doubt, and if they listen to it, like I will say, if I didn't fully tell you the truth, like I own that. You know what I mean? I fully own that. But also, I hope you hear my words as to why I did that to protect my space, my spirit, and my journey. And next time you'll know. Especially if you listen to this, I'm not doing shit. I'm gonna be at home drinking chai all pregnancy long, and I'm gonna have my baby in the bathtub. Like that is literally my plan. So yeah. So I guess so fast forward, I'm going through this whole pregnancy like this. I really enjoyed it. I traveled a lot. I really had a beautiful pregnancy. Obviously, it came with all of the heartburn and all of the all of the things that pregnancy comes with. But I remember you kind of popped up like right at, maybe 40 weeks where we started communicating a lot more and like just like, how are you doing? How are you doing? Like, are you like loopy yet? And like just exchanging how we were feeling. And it was like right on time because I was starting to get to that, antsy part of like the first pregnancy where I'm like, is she gonna come early? Is she gonna come late? Like I feel so big, like all the things. And it was nice to have someone to talk to who like was actually sharing truth from experience. So I said like, I think I'm starting to get like, like sensations are getting stronger, and you're like, okay, it could be another 6 weeks. And like it helped me like come back to reality that like, I actually haven't experienced this before, and I could be experiencing a ton of different things, and it doesn't mean anything or it means everything. Like just be very open about how this baby is choosing to present herself and come forward. And that was very necessary for me. I would say I think it was like around just before 40 weeks, I started to get like strong sensations. I was out at an event, and so I had like one of those contraction stupid counters on my phone, like to tell you like, oh, now it's time for this. And so I started tracking them, and it literally was like, all right, now you should probably get your bags together and head to the hospital. And like in my head, I knew I wasn't ever going to hospital, but I did start like telling my doula like, hey, this, she might be coming soon, or not she, but the baby's coming. And she's like, okay, just keep track. And I told you, and you're like, okay, it could be like another month. And I'm like, okay, like let's just roll with it. And thank God this was my route, because guess what? Had I gone into the hospital, this was 2 weeks before Haven decided to come forward. I could have been dilated. I guarantee you I was at least a little dilated. They would have just started tracking all this stuff, and who knows? Maybe say, she's ready. Oh no, it's not happening. Let me shove a balloon up you and like make it happen now, or do this and that and that, and like all of these things where it's just like exasperate this. And
I mean,
especially,
and that you don't have prenatal care, right? So
oh
you
yeah,
would
that
have
could have been
gone
an
in as a
issue.
Black woman with no prenatal care,
Right.
like not a great look for
Yeah.
the system, unfortunately. And then you would say you're in labor even though you're not. And so then they would have induced you,
Yeah.
and then you would have had a C-section, and you would have had the blood pressure medication. I mean, it's
The
scary.
gamut, the
It's
gamut,
scary.
right? It's scary. And like, yeah, let's touch on that a little bit. As a Black woman making this decision, I had fear off the strength of my skin alone that if something were to go wrong, I would start being like the witch hunt would start, and I would be framed as this negligent mother who like did this thing, didn't have any care, and was like being, all the stuff, all the stories. So I had a little bit of that fear, but I also like came to understand like I am so much safer as a Black woman choosing to be in my own space, um and to not engage with the system at all, who might then, they're going to create their own narrative. They're going to create their own narrative, and like I don't want any of that. I don't want anyone involved in my story that I don't choose to be. And so like I just feel in general, in the biggest on the biggest sense, as a Black woman, I'm safer choosing this route. It's as simple as that. And not even, as a woman, period, right? But with
It's like
all of
factually,
society's,
it's like factually true.
yeah. I
You
wish
know
I
what I
had
mean?
the clear numbers, but I don't have numbers because people always
Well,
want to see numbers. But like, yeah, it's just like let's look at history. Let's look at the way, we can look at Black mother mortality rates being increments higher, incrementally higher than non-Black people, non-Black women. And then you can also look at um, you know, epigenetics and like just the history of trauma and abuse that has been the forefront of this particular branch of medicine. If we're looking at OB, like the whole history of it all, it is literally formed on the rape and torture of Black women. And so to not see how the system is still infiltrated by this very dark beginnings, that we still are using a lot of these methods and ways of doing things is still in practice. Like, yes, I'm safer just being at home. Yes, I'm safer the way my ancestors have birthed their babies since the beginning of time. Like, that's the way I'm choosing to do this. I want to call on them. I want to call on my mother, who now in spirit, I could feel her energy so strong. She was a warrior on earth, but like she's a warrior in the spirit realm. Like she has been guiding, protecting, like I can feel her like so strongly. And yes, I'm going to go off the strength of that, of my ancestors, of my people, and of my like wisdom that is telling me this is the way that I want to come. This is the way that haven, this safe haven is going to come into this earth. And yes, I'm going to trust that. And so I think like through it all, I would love for more people who looked at like me to know that this is not just for white women. This is not just for, people in other countries or whatever, like whatever false perceptions. And I see the work being done. I see more and more people starting to kind of wake up to it. But yeah, like feeling like a catalyst because I have not known any. I have not known any personally in my life who have chosen this route. So that was kind of like all of that stuff was like really, really driving this decision too, like
hell
in
yeah.
a big way. And so yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm being told to go to the hospital from this like contraction. I hate the word, the contraction counter. And I'm like, okay, no, that's not happening. And lo and behold, I had 2 more weeks of spontaneous labor until the actual, active labor started. And so like on the morning of September 22nd, 22, but I have a video where I woke up and I like shot myself. I'm like, it's 92222. I think it's happening because I literally had woken up to like a burst, a gush. Like
Aw.
I like thought in my dream, I remember thinking like maybe I was half asleep. Like, what if my water just broke? Open my eyes and that was another thing that was like
Whoa.
like very like I don't know, that was like intuition or what. But yeah, I burst and I'm like, babe, it's happening. And like it just was like such a fun like start to the day. It was probably like 7 a.m., and so I had like hobbled over. I think I texted you too, like, I think it's starting, but it looks like there might be a little meconium. Sent a picture and you're like, yeah, a little meconium, good. Like it could be another, you were always like the reality check. You're like, could be another 72 hours. I'm like, oh my God, please no. And but there was a little meconium, it wasn't a big deal. And I just like it just started. Just the waves, just the waves. I called Brittany, she came. And I had an aunt that lives 2 hours away, and she's like my one aunt. People call her a hippie because she's like, the only one that's not a doctor. And she's a PhD doctor. Don't, hey, these titles are very important. Okay. So but she's not a medical doctor. So she wasn't like asking me the certain questions that were like triggering. And so she comes eventually, she shows up, and it was just like the perfect environment. It was just the four of us, including, so that being Brittany, my doula, my husband, my stepdaughter Layla, and Auntie Rosier, and my doggy.
So
And
one auntie knew the full truth.
she also didn't know, but she didn't really know the difference. She literally came and she asked Brittany, like, have you checked her? Like, checked my dilation. And Brittany
Okay,
was
so
like,
she didn't
no, I'm
totally.
not touching her. And she's like,
Okay.
oh, okay. She just doesn't know nor care.
Okay.
So she's like, she like wishes that she would have had home birth. So she just kind of was like an observer and kind of the perfect person to be there because she didn't really, she just wanted to make sure I was cool and cook for me before she left.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was 9 hours of surge after surge after surge. I remember just being like at one point, yeah, we had a birth pool and like the downstairs of my house was like set up, like totally a vibe, music playing, candles, incense burning, like just had affirmations that I made with my stepdaughter on the wall. And we were just kind of like going. I was eating in the beginning when I could and like just like got to flow through. And yeah, I mean they picked up. I think I got into the pool a little early because, it can slow down things. I don't necessarily know if it slowed down, but by the time it got more intense, I didn't want to be in the water anymore. I was like, ugh, this is gross. This is like getting gross. And I made my way upstairs. I'm like on my bed, like I just want it to be over. Like getting to that point where I'm like, even if it doesn't end, like I just need a break. Like I just need a break because it just felt like it was like it didn't stop. It started and just went. And like begging for mercy, but also just like loving it. Like, man, it's no joke. Your hormones are there to lead you through this shit. We are resilient. Like we're designed to do this. And so I guess it's like holding on to that. Like I'm designed to do this. My body is doing way all of it. Like I'm really not really doing much but complaining. I'm just here like, ugh. And yeah, it made eventually I was like, I have to poop and made my way to the bathroom and yeah, it just kept rolling in. And I got like on the toilet and she was coming. And yeah, at some point, I think I like just got on hands and knees and that was like the best position for me to like surrender like the control to the waves, but then also have a little bit of like I wasn't like completely, I had a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of I don't know the word, and Um, that's when like everyone ended up in the bathroom. My aunt popped back up. So she had like disappeared. I think she went outside and was just like chilling. That's why I'm like, she was the perfect person because she had disappeared and then popped back up. And we're in the bathroom. That's when it got kind of chaotic. I'm like, is it coming? Like, like screaming. And like Brittany kind of got into like go mode and was like, I mean, I kept asking her questions like, can I, it's so interesting because another thing that I've kind of reflected on is like even having her there, I'm kind of leaning towards her to like can I do this? Can I do this? And thankfully, most of the time she was like, you can do whatever you want. She was like 8 months pregnant herself and was like kind of, at some point she was sleeping in the corner. I peeped her like nodding off in the corner. So she was just like very much reminding me like, I'm just here. You can do what you want. When it got to that point, it was like, okay, got behind me, got to go mode. And there are certain things we hadn't talked about before the birth, like what I want exactly whenever she comes out or this or
Mm.
that. And so she kind of, I was like pushing, I got her head out and yeah, that ring of fire. I just remember like that burn. But I also just like feel like I literally was gone. Like I wasn't on this plane. Like it was just like my body's doing this. I'm here as a vessel and like here she is. Like come out, come out, come out. And so her head comes out. I think like later, a few pushes later, she just like plops, plops onto. Well, actually, no, my husband kind of got her. He had a towel because she was super slippery, got her, and she was just kind of like plopped onto the towel and like didn't make a noise. It's funny looking at it because it just feel like she just like came out like, whoa, like that was a rush. Like what just happened? So she comes out and the one part where I like hung up on this is not ideal to what I wanted in retrospect, but I like tried to like turn my leg over and I almost hit her head a little bit. And Brittany was kind of like, no, wait. She's kind of limp. She's kind of limp now. Slow down for a second. And then I waited a beep and then I was like, no, give me my fucking daughter. Turned my leg over and just like swooped her up. I think they were jarred by the fact that she hadn't made a sound, but I'm like, she was just fine. She was peaceful. She came out and she was like, it's not like she wasn't breathing. I swooped her into my arms, and she made her first little yelp, and it was just that, like my baby here in my arms. Like it was, I. The only reason I feel like I remember what happened is from seeing it because I was like completely transported. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
completely, just like on this like high of like, oh my God, this thing just happened. Like she's here, and like they announced she's a girl ahead of time before I like had seen.
Whoa.
Another thing, stupid, but I also knew, so I was just like, I know, give her to me. You know what I mean? Like in the moment, didn't even think of it, but certain things where I'm like, okay, I will be the first next time. I will see. I will lift up my baby and know what it is.
And
but
a lot of those things, if the birth keeper doesn't guide those conversations, a first-time mom doesn't necessarily think about claiming those details prenatally. Like don't announce it. You really have to like get ahead of that, I think.
Yeah. And that's another thing, where I know one, and this is I learned from school and facilitating, I would never cross that boundary. But also I know now to bring that conversation as a birth keeper. And I would hope that any birth keeper or woman that's stepping out of like the medical paradigm and doing this thing, whether you still claim to, call yourself a doula or whatever it is, just like these are the things that need to be discussed. These are the things that need to be clear because it's to the, a year later, I still think about it, So it's like you just don't want to rob the woman of anything. And, I know none of it was intentional. Like I know it was just like we were in the moment, it was heated and like all of these things. But yeah, those are just my little reflections on how it came. But like I said, I was like so ecstatic that I didn't even realize what was happening. I was just like, ah. And we were home. I literally I got back on the toilet. We put the bowl in the toilet, plopped out the placenta. She came out, no problems. And thank God. And I was just like, and she was a fat, like meaty piece of work.
Yep.
Like, thank you for all that you did. And like, I just love the placenta. Like, I just like grew to understand like this beautiful relationship. I didn't really want to encapsulate it or anything. I just was like, I just want to hold it and feel like you were the first person to like nurture my baby. Thank you. And so, I hobbled to my bed, laying there and like let all of the blood, all of the stem cells nourish my child. Just let it be. And eventually Layla and Gerard came and we burned the cord together and just got to like sing to her and bid adieu. Thank you. Okay, I'm taking over now. And later, like a few days later, I was able to make like a imprint on a like a board and like I wrote all her names. So like I had asked aunts and uncles and sisters to give her a name and like wrote it all on there. So that was like super sweet. And I just like I literally someone was like, what do you want to eat? I'm like, I want pizza. And like I'm like laying in bed with this new child eating pizza. And that was like the night she was born. I didn't go down the stairs of my house for I think 5 days. Like it was blissful. It was extremely blissful. And you had just done like the postpartum in bliss. And I just remember like that, just those words sticking with me. Like I want my postpartum to be blissful. Like I want, the narrative is just so negative about postpartum. Like how do I set myself up for like success in this? And it looked like my aunt that was there, she cooked and made sure I was cool. And then another aunt came in Nigeria, what they'll call it umogu. That's the name? I'm probably saying it horribly. but it's basically like when your mom comes and she'll stay with you for however long to make sure you're good. And so my aunts kind of took that place, and that was super sweet for
Good.
them to come and shifts and like
Would they stay with you? Like, would they sleep
yeah,
there?
yeah. Like my aunt just stayed one night, and then another one came, and then other people were just bringing food. But then even like almost a year later, my one of my aunts that's she has lots of sisters. I saw these aunts. One of them, she who hadn't been able to come, she came for my brother's like a ceremony, and then still came to the house and cooked a bunch of food, and we froze it. So it's just like everyone just making sure they're doing
Sweet.
their part.
Mm-hmm.
And
And what was
yeah.
the kind of response, if any, with this beautifully connected and supportive and also quite medical family,
Mhm.
and then you having this home birth? Is it just like once she's here, it's
Yeah.
just like total celebration, all good vibes?
Yeah, I think that it's nuanced. I feel like there's some people who haven't necessarily said it, but maybe didn't agree with me like having birth at home, where it feels like the energy is a little different. Like it's obviously it's all love and like joy that she's here and she's healthy, but maybe little comments that insinuate like
Mm.
you did this like kind of crazy, or like thank God everything's fine, that kind of energy,
Mm-hmm.
to where I just like whatever. I don't,
Whatever.
you're not gonna know the details. Like you're not gonna get the fun magical story
You
and like
should you
fine.
should just be like, did you know obstetrics is based on the torture of Black women? Like,
Oh,
can we talk about
didn't want to put it out there, but
can we
yeah.
talk about that? Like, talk
But it's
about
just kind of
crazy.
like it's kind of like I'll let you kind of have your
Of
perception
course.
of, and like I've overheard like one of my aunts who had talked to me right after said like I look so exhausted. I'm like, the fuck? I just pushed the baby out.
Whatever.
But doesn't look exhausted after I push the baby. Like, are you trying to find something? Because I was so happy. I was
Okay,
just
so
like literally
there was a
enjoying. So
little
there's
bit of
yeah.
calibration
So
there.
yes, yes. But even my aunt who was like, she I had talked to her like while I was pregnant, and she was really worried that I wasn't getting any ultrasounds, to the point where she's like, I'm losing sleep, like I can't, like you need it, because she
Yeah.
had a history of like being in labor and delivery, so she thinks like she, who knows what she's seen, so she was like really nervous that I wasn't like going this route. And I was able to be honest with her, like we have a good relationship. I was able to be honest, like, hey auntie, like this is the way I'm choosing to do it. I'm not. So she just stopped asking me questions.
Yeah.
And then she came afterwards and like everything was good. So it was all good. And so
Okay,
I
good.
got to like share more with her. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like the fear is something bad will happen.
Mm-hmm.
You will be hurt, the baby will be hurt, and you're not gonna have anyone that can save the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so for it to go well, that's like almost automatically alleviated and lifted, and no one's really talking about it or thinking about it. But it's also like, why is the assumption that something will go wrong? That's what I want to interrogate. And, it just is what it is.
Well,
And I get,
I don't think it's necessarily an assumption that something will go wrong, but it's,
the
everyone's been
fear.
indoctrinated to think it's insane to not have the safety net, air quotes, of a medical provider supervising.
Mm-hmm.
You might be one of the women where everything goes well, but we can't trust that you will be,
Right.
because
Yeah.
step,
It's a fear, a lack of trust in the process. Yeah, all of these things, definitely. Yeah. And it's just yeah, it's indoctrination, and it's a lot of things that I have just done the work of unlearning. Like
right.
I've just so I'm not afraid of it.
Mm-hmm.
um and then I see like some of my family members who are like, whoa, I want that too, and so maybe are taking a more natural route, and like and kind of questioning now, yeah, why are so many Black women dying, like yeah, why is it this way, why can't I just.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I want. Like, if I'm going to influence anyone, it's just so that they can make their own free choice. Like, that's where I see where free birth lies, is that you are free to fully like walk in autonomy in this decision, and like do what you deem best. And then if you decide to engage and things don't go your way, Like, I hope that you can find freedom in the fact that that was your choice. And this is just how it played out. We don't at the end of the day control any of this. And that's what I think was the most beautiful thing about birth, is like the surrender, like how it shows us surrender in the most beautiful and non like we have no choice but to relinquish. And that was what my experience was when she was ready to come out. It's like I have no choice but to like push when my body, when the fundus is pulling down on my uterus, and like it's clear that like I can make a mighty push right now and get my baby out. Like I could feel all of that. I don't want to be numbed. I don't want to be like asking when I can push, or like not being able to actually understand what was going on. Like that is like raw birth. It's just there was no mistake in this design. There's a reason why animals go away into a corner and have their babies. And so to return to that primal, beautiful nature of birth, I think is a benefit to it's a benefit to humanity, because I know like Haven will grow up with something different in her. She'll grow up with something different in her. And I was born in a hospital, and I shot out ready to go. My mom, like when she tells the story of my birth, she's like, you were a big baby. And like I was just like came 2 days early, and like my mom did induction, wait. Yeah, no pain medicine. So I don't know. People think that's natural birth. We'll just go with that. She had us in that way, right? And so she says that I just like shot out and I'm like ready to go. But then the stories of my siblings' birth, all of us have different stories. And I think our personalities are reflections on very much how we came into this earth. And I think like too many people, we're so disconnected, we don't think that it has much of anything to do with it. And I'm like, no, it has maybe everything to do with it. There's no way to prove it necessarily, but I see a difference.
Totally. And then it also leads to the cascade of what happens after. So when a baby is born free, that baby is more likely, of course, to follow the biological design of the mother baby, design. So it's going to be, she's going to co-sleep, she's going to breastfeed, she's not going to get jabbed up with 67 shots, or he's not going to get circumcised. Like it's a domino of what happens next, right? That then also greatly influences the health of the baby, the personality of the baby, the whole dynamic between mother baby in that first year, right? Versus the mom who gets the C-section, who then goes to the pediatrician and gets all the jabs and hi, Jared.
Oh, was that? Popped up. Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And yeah, it's just such a.
I think that a lot of people mistake the criticism of a system that is doing women wrong with judgment. Like no one is here to judge women and their choices. No one is here to make someone feel bad about how their baby came earthside. Like no one is here to attack the mother. The criticism is at a system that does not allow one, nature to take course in many ways, and two, the woman to understand, choose, and like be in full power of her body. Like that's what I'm criticizing. And so like you're saying, from that trickles down all of these other needless interventions, all of these other like maybe misconceptions about stuff like breastfeeding and sleep and all of these things that kind of disrupt the mother baby dyad. And then it just leads to disconnection, and it leads to a lot of pain, and people are wondering what's wrong. What's wrong with my kid? And it's like, and then they start blaming themselves. It's like, no, the whole thing is fucked up. The whole thing is like maybe intentionally designed to be fucked up. And it's like, and it's affecting everyone. It's affecting the entire universe. How different would it be if the matriarch truly was honored as it should be, and everyone's roles was exalted? A matriarchal system is like circular and well-rounded, and everyone is included in the way that they're meant to. Not women are in charge and domineering over everything. No, that's not what an actual matriarchal system is. But the patriarch, that is actually what happens. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it's linear, where there's a lead and they're telling everyone else what to do. And it's like, no, actually, what if we went back to that circular, rhythmical nature of like mother nature, of how she does things, and how like the divine feminine is actually approaching things, where they say like it's all holistic, it's all this and that and that and that and that and that. There's not symptom diagnosis, and then we're good. It's like, no, it's everything. Like, and that's like, I just really feel like that's what it is at the end of the day. It's like, it's so dynamic, and why there's room for a lot of compassion and love and nuance and experience, because every woman's going to have a different experience. And there's a lot of spontaneity in nature. As much as there's a pattern, it's all spontaneous.
I mean,
right?
it takes a lot of maturity and skillfulness, I think, for someone particularly who's been wronged by the system or feels adhered to the system, to hear critiques about that system and not take it personal, right? Like that requires a level of maturity and emotional intelligence that I would say the average person doesn't have. And so there's a lot of confusion, therefore, and a lot of misinterpretations of a lot of the work that I do, a lot of the work that Yolanda does, and our other, allies. Because of course, yes, we have to critique systems that oppress us. Of course, it's our social responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, right? Not just obstetrics, all of them.
Right, exactly. And you're not like putting a burning cross on a doctor's lawn. No, I want to look at the system, not just the individual. And within the system, there's going to be a lot of individuals that do things that I don't agree with, right?
Of course.
But I'm criticizing this overarching thing that does not properly teach the physiology and nature of birth.
Yeah.
And it's to the detriment of people's lives.
For real.
So anyway, we could go on and on, I'm sure. But like, I feel so grateful that I ran into these truths about birth and about the way it works and about my power as a woman. And like another like kind of flashback is I remember when we were you were like interviewing for RBK school, and I had said something about empowering women, and you're like, well, I would argue that we're not empowering anyone. The women already have their power. It's about remembering that the power is already mine. No one can really empower me. It's already here. It's already within me. It's already the design of who I am. Like my piece as a manifestation of God is to be in my power. And so like that hit me, because I'm like, whoa, yeah, I don't actually do that. Like, I don't say what women can and cannot and should do. Like, all I can do really is like share my piece and my story and my part. And like, hopefully from that yields way more stories of freedom and stories of people who are saying no more to the torture and like
and empowerment is a temporary state. Whereas, being powerful is an embodiment. And when you are powerful and in your power, what you find is it's contagious, right? There's this kind of contagion element to a powerful woman that
Absolutely.
It's what we're doing. That's what this is all about.
Right.
So a year later, how would you kind of summarize the gifts of what you've chosen and discovered in sovereign motherhood?
Yeah, I mean, I see a little girl who is strong-willed, who is already very aware, who
Mm-hmm.
who can like look at you and communicate herself even though there's no words.
We're talking
Like
about your
I
daughter.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I see her becoming like this completely fierce woman that I nod to the fact that she was able to come into existence in such a way where that's the very foundation
Mm-hmm.
of like who I see her becoming and who I want her to be and
And
who I
that it's
want her to
completely allowed.
understand.
It's
Yeah, like
allowed from the birth, yeah,
yeah,
that nothing
yeah,
stifled it.
not exactly. Nothing is getting in the way of that. And still, like I want it to remain like that. Like now we're making decisions about like what this looks like in her education and what this looks like, going forward and like how it all makes sense for our lives. But existing in the right here and now, I see that Haven is you know, I believe that who she is and who she's becoming will always circle back to who like I am allowing her to be and become. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, and who, like, there was nothing in her introduction into this world that impeded her autonomy. And I really want her to understand what that means. And I see it that a year later, I can only hope and imagine that that is what is making her the little girl that she is. And it only goes from there. And I feel I believe it'll continue to spiral and like help her to just grow into herself and into
Mm-hmm.
her power and to understand it at the depths, at like the core of who she is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, and like I'm fumbling along myself. Like I feel I see myself doing things, saying things where I'm like, oh, I want to try that different next time. And that's what I do. And I try it different next time. Or I'm like really proud of myself. I'm proud of myself for like sticking to like this path. And despite other people's opinions and thoughts on it, like I'm proud of me and my husband and our actual um like actually practicing what we're preaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that's gonna reflect on her. It's just gonna be a part of who she is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super cool. It's
It
super
is cool.
cool. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for everything, your work. Thank you for putting this out to the world and like continuing to do it despite maybe a lot of scary things that people say and do, you know what I mean? Like you are just like you're keeping you keep on keeping on. And so thank you for doing it. And yeah, I appreciate you and Yolanda and just being a part of just a little part of this bigger movement.
Mm-hmm.
I can only do my part. I can only like understand what I understand and move from there,
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Cool.
thank
Thank you.
you.
I hope you enjoyed the show today. You can support this podcast by donating to it on freebirthsociety.com and leaving an awesome review on whatever platform you listen on. The more reviews, the more visibility the show gets, so let's spread the word of sovereign birth. We've always got a lot going on at Free Birth Society, and you can find out about all of it at freebirthsociety.com, at Free Birth Society on Instagram, and opt in to my newsletter below in the show notes. We offer courses on free birth, authentic midwifery, and the blood mysteries, as well as one-on-one coaching, in-person retreats, and of course, our annual Women's Festival. Our exclusive, vetted, private membership is definitely something to check out if you're looking for a community of wise sisters. Together we rise. We must speak our stories, claim our lives, and support one another. This is the living revolution, and I am so grateful to be in it with all of you. I'll leave you with our epic Free Birth Society theme song, Wild Woman by Aruba Red.
I honor you for the wisdom you held, the ancient traditions of plant medicine and womb magic. I feel the spirit of the ancestors as I place my hands upon my belly. This sacred portal will be honored. Eons upon light beams of survival, withstanding the eradication of our power by design. I will not allow the separation of our young to be forced upon me. My sisters will no longer birth in captivity. The picket line redefined from burning our wild women to paralyzing us and drugging our babes. Strapped down in a clinical white bed, drying up the milk from our breasts. Keep your needles. My family will never again be doomed to chase those dragons or your poison. We reject your fear. We choose love. Everything with intention. Death, ascension. I will fly and bring her back from the stars.